Welcome to Season 3 of the LRA's Capital Connection. I'm Wendy Warren, your host for the season, and today I'm joined by LRA President and CEO Stan Harris. How you doing today, Stan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, today's the fourth day of the session?
Third day.
Third day of the session. It's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
And as we do with every session, we start off with a primer to kind of remind folks that don't do this every day what it means to pass a bill and the process, because as we know, throughout the session, the media will pick up on little bits and bites, and people, will call with their hair on fire sometimes, like thinking that it's the last bite of the apple. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. First thing that I always remind folks is to try not to be reactionary. The best thing that you can do is to read something, and if you don't understand it, give us a call and let us try to help you understand the context of it a little bit better. On my desk, I keep two documents that are really important to us. One is Title 26 that deals with alcohol, because we have a lot of restaurants that serve alcohol. We have a lot of bar members. We have hotel members. We have people that have music venues, country clubs. And we have a lot of retail members as well that are also looking to see, how does this affect them? And the other thing is Title 51 that deals with food service establishments and how they're licensed at the state level. We're lucky in our state that we don't have 64 parish health departments, that each of them has a separate set of standards for restaurants and bars and food service establishments, that we have a consolidated system. I think it works a whole lot better. But when you get to the process, a bill has to be introduced, and that's what they're really doing right now. All the bills, House bills are introduced in the House, the Senate bills are introduced in the Senate. They'll move from there. They'll be assigned to a subject matter committee. The committee may or may not have a hearing on it. It really is dependent on the chair of that committee deciding if it's something that they want to have a hearing on. Let's say it's a bill that doesn't get a hearing and the author wants to still have it considered. They can make a discharge petition, which allows the entire House or the entire Senate, or what they would call the Committee of the Whole, to be able to discuss this should it be successful in getting a supermajority to have it discharged for that discharge petition. Also, during any time that a bill has left the committee favorably and has moved into the floor, anyone can vote to table that bill. Okay. And then only someone who voted in the affirmative could call it back. So sometimes people that vote in the affirmative, in the negative, might vote in the affirmative even though they don't support it, so that they could bring it back up.
Got it.
There's some technical things that go with that. Once that bill is voted on in one of the chambers, the House or the Senate, then it goes across. It has to lay over for a day or two, and then it's going to be reviewed for any amendments that were made to it. Then it's assigned to a committee, read in again, and then the committee may or may not have a hearing. And if they have a hearing, there's testimony that's typically allowed on those things, and then it goes back into that chamber. If there are differences between the House and Senate version, then it's typically assigned to a conference committee. There's 6 conferees on every bill. So when we have the money bills, like the budget bill, HB1, they'll come through, and that's typically going to be the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, the Chair of Ways and Means and Appropriations in the House, the Chair of Revenue and Fisc and Finance in the Senate, because those are the money people, and that's where the sausage is really made on this big budget when they're deciding where this money's going to go. And this year it's going to be pretty big, because they have $1.7 billion of expected revenue that's in excess that they can spend. So they're going to be looking at new shiny objects.
Right. And they're also going to be looking at I know that there's a rainy day fund someone's trying to propose for disasters. I read that as one of the bills. There's a lot of ideas that are coming up that may make this, the state of Louisiana position us a little bit better, specifically in disasters.
Yeah, when the prior administration left office, they left about a $1 billion deficit for that pending fiscal year. The governor took office in early January, and they were responsible for recovering $1 billion between there and July 1st. Also, the next fiscal year showed about a $2 billion loss. So that's when they passed the 1 cent of extra sales tax and raised the excise taxes on alcohol in order to be able to generate some additional fees. They also got rid of some things that had exemptions. The state had been giving 100% inventory tax credit back to businesses that paid it to parishes. That was cut to 75%. Right. It remains there today. So they had to do some fiscal things to get our house in order. We've always had a rainy day fund. We've also, the other part that we added probably 10 plus years ago, was the budget stabilization fund. And they've never really had any money put into that. So when they have these excess dollars, there's a certain amount of money that has to go into the rainy day fund. Certain amount now goes to the budget stabilization fund. And in most cases, while this was legislation, it required a vote of the people and a constitutional amendment to create these things. Well, one of the pieces of legislation I think that you referred to is they want to take away the cap so that they can attach some of that money and spend it because they know they've got money to go replenish it. I'm not sure that the conservative members of the bodies are really going to be comfortable with that. And when you talk about those kinds of changes, they don't require a simple 50% plus one vote majority. They require a supermajority of 70% of both bodies. And I'm not sure there's a wherewithal there. Then the last part is, it also has to go to the governor to sign.
Right.
I think the governor would probably be favorable to spending the money right now as they're going out because those funds, they've created about $2 billion in money in these funds, and they were basically down to zero after the first 2 years of the Edwards administration. So I don't want to tip my hat and say that they've done a great job in doing that. We raised taxes really significantly on the taxpayers here in the state. So that's where the money came from. One of the misnomers, I think, a lot of times is people take the opinion that, if I go to speak to a business group and I ask them, do you think that state government should be able to raise revenue to meet its priorities? A lot of people raise their hands. When I say, do you want to pay higher taxes and fees? No hands go up. It's the exact same thing.
Right. Got it. So tell me a little bit about the hot button issues we're looking at in this session. This is a fiscal session, correct?
Yeah, it's a fiscal session, so it limits every member to no more than 5 bills. There's 720 possible bills that could be filed that aren't fiscal related. We don't have that many bills in the whole hopper this time. And part of it is it's the end of a term. You've got some term limited people as well. And you've got some people that are going to be seeking other offices, and they'd rather get this work done as quickly as possible so they can get back on the campaign trail. Because legislators that are elected and sitting in the Capitol can't raise money right now until June the 8th when they adjourn or sooner. And everyone starts and they go, we don't have a lot of work. We may adjourn sooner. And this is my 13th plus year of doing this, and they've never adjourned early for anything. So I'm not going to take that. But getting back to the hot button issues, there's always the governor would love to pass a minimum wage bill, even though it's exempted tipped workers, so the tipped wage would remain. I just don't think that it's going to get a lot of motivation. There's a House and there's a Senate version. It proposes a state minimum wage of $10, moving to $12, moving to $14, and then it's adjusted for inflation. We don't have it today. The market has driven that. Typically, as an association, we've worked against mandates, and I think we'll probably take the position that we'll stand against this particular mandate. There's another bill, Senate Bill 194 by Senator Mizell, that seeks to bar anyone 18 to 20 in its present form from working, performing, or being present in Class A licensee, which would be a bar. Plenty of states allow this. Plenty of states allow them to work there. We've been struggling to find workers for a long time for our industry since COVID, and that's going to be a hot button issue, especially to our bar operators. We've heard from lots of our members about this particular thing, what it does and doesn't do. What do we think the chances are? Obviously, we'll actively engage on this particular bill. The way it works with us at the LRA is in the interim. We work with our executive committee that's made up of all Class A restaurant members, and I put these things in front of them and present them to them. I don't go through our entire bill list because there's a lot of these things that I know I don't need to discuss further with them because they're a carryover from a prior year, and if we opposed it then, we're probably going to stay opposing it now. But there's quite a few bills that deal with those types of issues. We've got a few bills that we're doing that bring clarity to things. For example, if you operate in a parish that allows an alcoholic beverage to be taken off a licensed premises. The ATC statewide has taken the position that you can't buy a drink at the bar and leave with it. You only can do it at a table. So we're providing some clarity in statute, working with ATC. I just got a text from a few minutes ago asking me if we could change language that their attorneys are concerned with. But what we're trying to do is give clarity to that operator so that they understand that, we want them to be compliant, but at the same time, we don't want to do things that have a distinction with no difference.
Right. Yeah. Just for the hell of it. And also further restricting business in a way that makes it difficult on the person serving the customer, because you have service bars and you have that are serving tables, and it's just why.
I could be sitting in the bar having a cocktail and my dinner or lunch guest says that they can't make it and I want to finish my drink or take it with me, and then would I be doing something in violation of a state law? So I want to make sure, and again, this isn't an expansion of it across the state. This is only in those parishes or municipalities that allow it. For example, when we talked about the under 21 thing, one of the cities, Shreveport, passed an ordinance some time ago that 18, 19, and 20-year-olds can't be present in a bar. They can still work there, but they can't be present there to be a customer. So I get it. There's some local options and things that they approach this with, but at present, as I said, this is a hot button issue. It's not going to go away. It's going to have to be something that's discussed, and it's driven by public reaction to the death of an LSU co-ed in very, very unfortunate circumstances. And we're all sorry for how that happened, and it takes a broad swipe at all of us. But, one of the ludicrous points in this to me is that there's no money for enforcement. They're not adding 50 agents. And at the same time, you could still be 18 years old and own a bar, but you wouldn't be able to operate it. So it's just kind of silly sometimes that we want to make people feel better, but we're really not putting any teeth into anything. And when they fail to do that, then they wonder why nothing changes.
Right. That is true. That happens. We've seen that happen so many times.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Louisiana restaurants are open and ready to serve you. This is Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser. Satisfy your cravings with world-famous Louisiana seafood. All the flavors you love, prepared by our world-famous chefs, and fresh from our bountiful waters to your plate. So head over to your local favorite restaurant and be sure to ask for authentic Louisiana seafood. Brought to you by the Louisiana Restaurant Association and Louisiana Seafood Board. A perfect pair.
We're back. Thank you for listening to our sponsor, Louisiana Seafood. Stan, you want to walk us through some of the LRA specific things we're watching and dealing with right now?
Sure. So there are lots of bills that deal with employment discrimination based on gender identity, verification of attendance at employment interviews, employment practices, and whether you can request someone to legally share their wage history or disclose their wage, or then retaliate against someone for sharing it with another coworker. I mean, some of the practices in here are absurd. People talk about what they make. I've been in the workforce for the better part of my life, 2/3 of my life. I've never told anybody what I make in the workforce. It's not relevant to the conversation. But, I understand that people are looking to create this avenue. But all of these, in my view, in the most cases, put another mandate on a business.
Right.
And as a trade association, we look at these mandates as just another cut. It's kind of death by 1,000 cuts. So we have to be present. We have to engage on those things. We have to find the ones that make sense. Look, there's a economic development bill to set up an economic development district around LSU and Southern universities. Now, normally you would say, what would a trade association care about that? But this, if passed, would give huge authority to the board of this that is not publicly elected, that would be appointed by LSU and the representatives, that the elected officials that are around there. They could impose a 5 mil property tax. They could impose sales taxes. They could impose a hotel occupancy tax, all on these businesses. And the other part, which is kind of cute in this bill, is it doesn't have to be contiguous to the LSU campus or to any other part of the EDD. So they basically could go to that. Now, their cover part that they've added to this bill since it came back is that if there's any voters that are within that particular district, they get to do that. But if you pick strictly commercial businesses, there typically aren't people that live inside those businesses.
Right.
So while it's there to be a foil, and when you really look at these bills, the intention is to be able to tax people without representation. And again, that's imposing mandates where it really none should exist. There's a couple of bills that are trying to deal with unemployment and people not showing up for interviews and lowering the unemployment time frame from 26 to 20 weeks. And there's another one that adjusts the amount of unemployment income that you can earn based on the percentage of unemployment using the federal number and the state number. I think those are interesting approaches. I don't see this governor signing anything that's anti-worker and pro-business. His history has been that that's not what he does. We worked really hard for the last 3+ years on trying to get a new medical fee schedule for workers' comp for the medical service.
Really important because it makes us competitive with other states, correct?
It's not only important to us, we haven't updated it since 1996.
Right.
And the way it works is that anything that is a new medical procedure, just dream of every medical procedure that's come up in the last 27 years. And those procedures are charged out at reasonable and customary cost less 10%. So, for example, if it's a certain type of MRI or CT scan or something like that for diagnostics, a large insurer like one of the big group plans might be paying $300 for that. A work comp provider for us, using the same machine and the same study, might pay 8 times that amount.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying we should get the lowest rate possible, but what I'm saying is that we've got to have some fee schedule that puts those within the framework so it's predictable and we can expect what we would pay. And also, if we use it as a multiplier of something like a lot of states use the federal Medicare reimbursements, it might be 1.2 times that, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, whatever it is. That gives us something to talk about, and it gives us something that's self-updating.
Right, and that's important when we're running a fund and we're trying to, predict risk and the cost associated and how, it's.
Well, there's no question. I mean, we assess and collect premium today for injuries and accidents that may occur tomorrow.
Right.
So we've got to make sure that we're collecting the right amount. So that's why we use actuaries to look at are we validating that, and are we charging appropriate rates when we do our rate study, and then when we do our reserve study every spring and looks at the prior year and the still open fund years, it's just giving us a look at the marketplace. I still think the best thing you can do if you're an LRA member is to participate in our self-insurers fund. It's been in operation since 1982. It is the number one benefit. I saw yesterday that one of the large funds was returning a massive dividend, which means that they definitely overcharged you over $100 million over the last 5 or 6 years. It's really irrelevant when that occurs and someone goes, well, gosh, that's a great thing. It's not a great thing.
No.
What your dividend should be if you have good outcomes.
Right.
It shouldn't be because we collected too much money and then we didn't need it.
Right.
COVID generated a lot of that because during COVID, workforces were smaller and people weren't reporting workplace injuries as much because there were a lot of people in many industries working from home and working remotely. We don't have that ability in the hospitality business. If you don't show up, you're typically doing your job at another place. You can't be a restaurant and work from home and serve your guests from there. It's just very difficult to do.
I can mix drinks at home, but they're for me, not for the customer.
Home consumption only. I get it.
Well, we're going to take a break and hear from the LRA Workers Comp.
Louisiana hotels know a thing or two about hospitality, from the thread count of the sheets, to the little scented soaps in the bath, to the praline on the pillow. For the Louisiana Restaurant Association's SIF, the same is true when it comes to workers' comp. Our team knows what Louisiana hotels need when it comes to your team's safety and your success. Everybody who's anybody goes with LRA Workers Comp. Ask around. In this business, word of mouth is everything.
We're back. Stan, want to tell us what else is going on that sheet, multiple list that you have in your hand?
Pages and pages.
Pages and pages.
Well, this year there is a data privacy bill by Senator Womack that he is co-authoring with House member Deschantel, and that particular bill is a much better bill than what we had last year. The data privacy bill, many states are passing that creates the protections for the individual. But at the same time, our concerns are always about small businesses and restaurants and things like that. And you go, well, gosh, why would data privacy matter? Well, let's say that you have a loyalty club, or let's say you have a birthday club, or let's say you've connected, people have opted in on your website to get information from you, or to have you send them specials or daily menus or things like that, or text messages. Anything that deals with data, you could be liable for. So this one follows the model of a bill that was passed in Utah. It's not as perfect as we'd like, but it is far better and more palatable than the bill was, and it already contains a lot of these small business exceptions. There's a bill by Representative Amy Freeman that would propose up to 12 weeks of paid family leave for a broad array of things. It's paid for by a employment tax that's paid 55% by the worker and 45% by the employer. Again, this is another unfunded mandate on employment. It's got an exemption for businesses that have 25 or less full-time equivalents. I've spoken with the author about stretching it out to 50 or 100. It's a real struggle in a small business. What if you had 4 people out or 5 people out on paid medical leave at the time that you're trying to get this done? So I try to look at those things through the prism of an operator, a small operator. The bulk of our members in the LRA are small businesses, family-owned businesses, individual franchisees or independent franchisees of a brand. And they don't have the capacity to do it. You know, the person in their organizations is the HR manager, is the person that opens the restaurant that day. They're also the marketing manager
and the plumber
and picking the specials and the maintenance manager and the security manager and
whatever's
the parking
necessary.
lot cleanliness manager and all those kinds of things. And look, we do it and we work in the industry because we love it. It's not because we don't know anything else. It's what we know, and we think we're good at it, and we think we can create a better product or a better experience than the person across the street. But, you know, what we're going to do is pay attention to this. There's bills to legalize marijuana. There's a bill that would, if marijuana doesn't get legalized, it would change the definition of THC in an injured worker. Right now, under current statutes, if someone is injured and they have a post-accident drug test and they have THC in their system, then they're not able to get workers' comp benefits. Well, workers' comp takes the position that medical marijuana today is not prescribed because it's not allowed by federal law. It's just recommended. Now, people that use it, and I'm not objecting to people using that, but in the workplace, let's say you're a delivery company and you deliver products and you have a driver who either wrecks the vehicle or falls out the back of it while they're trying to load something because they forgot the ramp wasn't up. Well, those kinds of things create these outcomes, and just changing the statute doesn't change the risk. We need to have a larger conversation about it. We started this year with a study committee. The business community participated in it. But one of the conflict areas that we just couldn't resolve was alcohol doesn't stay in your system very long. THC stays in there a long time. The Department of Alcohol Tobacco Control is dealing with all kinds of issues where THC is in beverages. We saw some information the other day that a frozen drink daiquiri type shop had offered a beverage that had 100 milligrams of THC in it. Now, my gracious, that's probably 25 times what anyone would take in a normal day. But they're offering it because they didn't know it was illegal.
Or the illegal vending that happens, you know, when the person walks through a crowd with a
or
tray
a festival.
or a festival or whatever with some,
Sure.
home baked goods, hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod.
Well, it's why we've always taken a careful approach with cottage food.
Yeah.
Because it's not produced in an inspected facility, and they don't even know the Department of Health doesn't even know they exist.
Right.
So in that case, they're operating kind of in a real gray area that the state's trying to give them cover to. We've got a couple of bills that deal with shrimp and crawfish labeling.
Yeah.
One by Representative Cormier that we've spoken to him about. He really didn't. He told us he didn't know what was in it. So that scares me. The fines that are for not listing shrimp or crawfish as imported. They're trying to take the menu labeling bill that passed a couple of years ago that's in Title 51 that LDH enforces and take a criminal statute that was done years ago on mislabeling crawfish and shrimp. I personally, I don't think that it's the right bill. I think that they've got a structural issue with it. But at the same time, we're going to object to it because I don't think that we should be punishing people for failing to list something when you can't get domestic crawfish year-round. You can't get domestic shrimp year-round, and we're making it harder. I think people should comply with the laws and the regs as they exist, and they should pay attention to those things. We have a bill in Louisiana that says if you call catfish, it's got to be of domestic origin. It can't be bassa or swai. You can just call it fried fish. That's totally legal.
Right.
So paying attention to those types of things, asking the restaurant where your food came from is totally allowed. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're encouraging, we feel like we're the industry of food safety. We have a great record here in dealing with not transmitting foodborne illnesses. We have a great relationship between the LRA and the Department of Health and our food sanitarians that do a great job across the state keeping us in order. And we've got probably the best system. You don't have to have a grade. You don't have to have a score. That sanitarian, if you're operating in an unsafe condition or unsanitary condition, can close you under their emergency powers right then. So people that do this understand that a food service license, an alcohol license are all privileges. They're not rights, and they come with responsibilities. So we support those responsibilities, but we want to make sure that they're reasonable and that they're not changing regularly and that we have a shifting field and people don't really understand what they're going to be measured against.
Right.
So for that's why we spend so much time. Our lobby team and myself will be spending the next 6 or 7 weeks. It's kind of like we said, we finished Lent on Good Friday, and we went into our next season of Lent for
On
the next
Easter
7
Monday.
weeks. Yeah, so we didn't get too long a break, but with that we've got we'll follow Capital Connections. We'll talk about that. Coming up, our last event is going to be LRA Day at the Capitol. That's going to be on May the 2nd on Tuesday. We start at the City Club at noon. We'll have some policy briefings. We'll invite some of our elected officials and statewide elected candidates. We're not going to invite the candidates for governor because we just did a gubernatorial forum last week. But we'll bring some of the legislators that are looking maybe to cross over from House to Senate or look to get into leadership and give them a chance to address our members. We'll go visit our legislators on the Capitol grounds, and then we'll have a little reception at the LRA House, which is our advocacy base for the LRA in Baton Rouge. We hope you can join us. If you're interested in that, you can contact the LRA. You can send an email to communications@lra.org. And they can give you all the details. We hope you'll make the effort because your voice is really important. And grassroots approach, knowing those people who are your elected officials in your district. You're in their House district, their Senate district. And with the new maps, we need to pay attention. I realize that I've just changed from one House member to another in my district where I reside. So pay attention to those things. It matters.
It does matter. And just to express how much, when they see us coming, they know that we work for the LRA and we're going to be lobbying on your behalf. It's our job. It's what we're passionate about. It's what we do every day. When they see you coming, they eat in your restaurant. They ask you for donations and contributions.
You celebrate. And they celebrate their special events of life there. They create memories at your restaurant. And it's the one thing that I remind people about. We are your advocate. Our job is to protect and advocate on behalf of the restaurant and the hospitality industry here in Louisiana. And it's something that we take very seriously. We want to be your trusted advisor when you have a question on policy, practices, how to operate your business, how to sell your business, what you do to acquire a business. You got a tax notice. What should I do with this? Anything related to your business, we want to be that trusted advisor so that we can help you. And if we don't have the answer off the top of our head, trust me, we've got resources that can help us find it and find it rather quickly. That's the value of participating and engaging with the LRA. And we don't exist without your financial support.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Stan, and we'll be hearing from him later on in the session. But in the interim, we'll do both. Our Director of Government Affairs and Policy is going to be joining us every week, every other week, just to kind of tell us what's going on and keeping us in the loop on how the sausage is made and maybe some behind-the-scenes things that you wouldn't normally hear on the nightly news. So stay tuned. Thanks, everyone.